What's up guys, Nashty here and welcome back to my channel. On this vlog episode, we'll be rounding up the best budget smartphones in the Philippines with premium build. So what do I mean by premium build? Well, to start off, this should be smartphones that are not made of plastic. Meaning its back cover should at least be made of something like metal, like aluminum. It could be glass, carbon fiber, leather. So basically anything that is not plastic, which is usually associated with budget smartphones. So you will ask me, so what benefits does a premium build bring to a smartphone? Well, there's not really much. Well, aside from its more visually appealing look, depending on the material used, sometimes it would make the smartphone lighter. It could also be sturdier. Some would enable features like wireless charging and many more. I'm sure you want to find out now which smartphones I'm talking about. Let's not wait any longer. Let's get down to business because it's about to get nasty. Here are the 2020 budget smartphones in the Philippines with premium build. Let's start the list with the Huawei Nova 7 5G, which comes with a 6.53-inch OLED display of Full HD resolution. It has a glass front and back panel and an aluminum frame. It runs Android 10 with EMUI 10.1 on top, but without Google Play services. It is powered by an octa-core Kirin 985 5G processor with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of non-expandable storage. The Nova 7 5G has a quad camera setup with a 64-megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, an 8-megapixel telephoto camera with 3x optical zoom and face detection autofocus, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, and a 2-megapixel macro sensor. It's also capable of shooting 4K videos, along with slow-mo videos, and also has gyro EIS. In front, it has a 32-megapixel selfie camera, also capable of shooting 4K videos. There's a 4,000 mAh battery on board that supports 40 watts fast charging and 5 watts reverse charging. It has no 3.5mm audio jack but has FM radio, a fingerprint scanner, USB-C port, and NFC. Its price starts at 23,990 pesos, making it one of the more expensive smartphones on our list. The next smartphone on our list is the Realme 6 Pro, which comes with a 6.6-inch IPS LCD of Full HD resolution with 90Hz display refresh rate and Gorilla Glass 5 protection. The Realme 6 Pro has a glass front and back panel but with a plastic frame. It runs Android 10 with Realme UI on top and is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G processor with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of expandable storage. It has a quad camera setup with a 64-megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, a 12-megapixel telephoto camera with 2x optical zoom and face detection autofocus, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, and a 2-megapixel macro sensor. It's also capable of shooting 4K videos, slow-mo videos, and has gyro EIS. It has a dual front camera setup with a 16-megapixel wide-angle camera coupled with an 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera. There's a 4,300 mAh battery on board which supports 30 watts fast charging. It also features a 3.5mm audio jack, an FM radio, a side-mounted fingerprint scanner, and a USB-C port. It retails for 16,990 pesos. The third smartphone on our list is another one from Realme, which is the X3 Super Zoom. This smartphone sports a 6.6-inch IPS LCD of Full HD resolution with a 120Hz display refresh rate and Gorilla Glass 5 protection. It has a glass front and back panel and a plastic frame. It runs Android 10 with Realme UI on top and is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus processor with 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gig of non-expandable storage. It has a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, an 8 megapixel telephoto camera with 5 times optical zoom and face detection autofocus plus optical image stabilization, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro sensor. It's capable of shooting 4K videos, slow-mo videos, and has gyro EIS. It also has a dual front-facing camera setup with a 32 megapixel wide-angle camera coupled with an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera. It has a 4200 mAh battery capable of 30 watts fast charging. It lacks a 3.5mm audio jack and an FM radio. However, it has a fingerprint scanner and a USB-C port. It retails for 24,990 pesos, making it the most expensive smartphone on our list. Up next, we have the Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite, which comes with a 6.47-inch AMOLED display of Full HD resolution with HDR10 support and protected by Gorilla Glass 5. It has a glass front and back panel with an aluminum frame. It runs Android 10 with MIUI 11 on top and is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G processor with 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of non-expandable storage. It has a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, laser autofocus, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensor, and a 2 megapixel macro sensor. The Mi Note 10 Lite is capable of shooting 4K videos and slow-mo videos. In front, it has a 16 megapixel selfie camera. It has a 5260 mAh battery that supports 30 watts fast charging. It features a 3.5mm audio jack, an FM radio, an in-display fingerprint scanner, a USB-C port, an IR blaster, and NFC. Its price starts at 16,990 pesos. Then we have the Xiaomi Redmi Note 9S, which comes with a 6.67-inch IPS LCD of Full HD resolution with HDR10 support protected by Gorilla Glass 5. It has a glass front and back panel with a plastic frame. It runs Android 10 with MIUI 11 on top and is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G processor with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of expandable storage. It has a quad camera setup with a 48 megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera, a 5 megapixel macro sensor with autofocus, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. It's capable of shooting 4K videos, slow-mo videos, and has gyro EIS. It has a 16 megapixel front-facing camera as well. It packs a 5020 mAh battery with 18 watts fast charging support and features a 3.5mm audio jack, an FM radio, a side-mounted fingerprint scanner, a USB-C port, an IR blaster, and features a water-repellent coating. Its price starts at 10,490 pesos, making it the most affordable smartphone on our list. Last but not the least, we have the Xiaomi Redmi Note 9 Pro, which comes with a 6.67-inch IPS LCD of Full HD resolution with HDR10 support and Gorilla Glass 5 protection. It has a glass front and back panel with a plastic frame. It runs Android 10 with MIUI 11 on top and is powered by an octa-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G processor with 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of expandable storage. It has a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel primary camera with face detection autofocus, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera, a 5 megapixel macro sensor with autofocus, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. It's also capable of shooting 4K videos, slow-mo videos, and has gyro EIS. It has a 16 megapixel front-facing camera as well. It packs a 5020 mAh battery which supports 30 watts fast charging. It features 3.5mm audio jack, an FM radio, a side-mounted fingerprint scanner, a USB-C port, an IR blaster, NFC, and a water-repellent coating. Its price starts at 12,490 pesos. I've come up with a comparison table of the 6 budget smartphones in the Philippines with a premium build. Well, as you saw, all 6 of them would come with a glass front and glass back panel. However, it differs when it comes to the frame. The more affordable ones come with a plastic frame, while the more expensive ones come with an aluminum frame. Price-wise, the specs of these smartphones are not directly comparable. So let's start with display and resolution. If we're looking at just that one, the Realme X3 comes out on top with its 120Hz display refresh rate. However, it's an LCD one, as opposed to the Huawei Nova 7 5G and Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite, which come with an AMOLED display. As for OS and chipset, the Realme X3 Super Zoom leads the pack with its Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus processor. And while all of them come with Android 10, the Huawei Nova 7 5G doesn't come with Google Play services. As for storage and RAM, the Realme X3 Super Zoom is the runaway winner with its 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. However, it's non-expandable, which is the same case with the Huawei Nova 7 5G. The Realme 6 Pro has 128 gigs of expandable storage and 8 gigs of RAM, which is probably a better compromise. When it comes to cameras, those with telephoto lenses are the more versatile ones, which means that it doesn't include the 3 Xiaomi smartphones on our list. As for battery and charging, the best setup would probably be that of the Huawei Nova 7 5G with its 4000 mAh battery and 40 watts fast charging support, which is the fastest in the bunch. However, it's a Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite that has the highest battery capacity at 5260 mAh. All 6 smartphones were released in 2020 and their prices are quite far apart from one another. So let's look at it this way. For those that are priced below 15,000 pesos, perhaps the better buy would be the Xiaomi Redmi Note 9 Pro because it has more RAM than the Redmi Note 9S, it has NFC, and it has a faster charging support. For budget smartphones with premium build between 15,000 pesos and 20,000 pesos, it's a tough choice between the Realme 6 Pro and the Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite. Unless you need an AMOLED display and a marginally better processor, I would get the Realme 6 Pro because it has a 90Hz display refresh rate, it has more RAM, it has more base storage, which is also expandable, and it also has a telephoto camera. And for the most expensive smartphones on our list, it's also hard to choose between the Huawei Nova 7 5G and the Realme X3 Super Zoom. But I think in the end, it really depends on what you need. You get the Huawei Nova 7 5G for its OLED display, its 5G connectivity, and its 40 watts fast charging support. Meanwhile, I would get the Realme X3 Super Zoom for its 120Hz display refresh rate, its more powerful Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus processor, and its 12 gigs of RAM. As you can see, guys, you don't need to spend lots of money to be able to buy a smartphone with a premium build. No, more and more manufacturers are actually coming up with smartphone models that offer, a high-end look with a fraction of the price of a high-end smartphone. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this episode. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing and like the notification bell. Only here on the channel where Nashty is nice. I'm Nashty. Till then.